information on Thomas Henry Fuchs, who was Grandpa's mom's grandpa.
Nice. Yeah. Here we go.
Is it Thomas Fuchs?
Good old Thomas Henry, from our family history. Thomas Henry Fuchs was his full name. His wife was Harriet. And today we get to learn his place on our own family chain. Born in 1853 to Thomas and Mary. Tom was quite a rascal, so they say. Tired of the England scene, at the age of just 19, he sailed on over to the USA. Good old Thomas Henry, from our family history. Thomas Henry Fuchs was his full name. His wife was Harriet. And today we get to learn his place on our own family chain. The first time Tom saw Harriet, she took his breath away. They were at a party when she saw her face. Her face was so divine. Her voice was so refined. Well, being a rascal, Tom gave chase. In an act of flirting play, he took her shawl away. This teasing nonsense Harriet did rebuke. With Thomas close behind, to her friend she spoke her mind.
Oh, I just hate that Thomas Fuchs.
Good old Thomas Henry. Thomas Henry Fuchs was his full name. His wife was Harriet. And today we get to learn his place on our own family chain. Tom and Harriet wed, had 16 children, so it said. Their names were many, so we'll do our best.
I'm Alice. I'm Edith.
I'm John. I'm Ivan.
I'm Amy. I'm Thomas. I'm James.
I'm Alfred.
I'm Walter. I'm Marion. I'm Harriet. I'm Nettie.
I'm Leslie.
I'm Laverne. And I'm Elsie.
With lots of love and charm, they lived on their family farm and lived their lives as followers of Christ.
Let's go.
It was a struggle to provide for a large family of children. They had 16 children, 8 boys and 8 girls. There was a lot of contagious diseases at that time. They had much sickness and deaths. 4 children died from the effects from them, all under 2 years old. Another child, Alfred, died from burns at the age of 3.5 years. The youngest child, Elsie, died with bowel trouble at the age of 1.5 years.
One Sunday, sorry, I'm losing my voice. One Sunday, father and mother went to church to have a baby blessed. Edith, the second daughter, stayed home with the other children. She was 12 years old. She started a fire to get supper ready. She went to the cellar to get something. Father had a can of blasting powder on the shelf. It was tipped over. She picked it up to set it straight. When one of the children called out, "Here comes father and mother," she hurried out of the house, not thinking of the can of powder in her hand. For some unknown reason, the powder exploded while in her hand. 5 of the children were badly burned. Alfred had a plaid cotton suit on. It was ablaze all over. They dashed him in a tub of water. He was burned so badly he died 3.5 weeks later. For 9 weeks, Father helped to nurse and wait on those children with patience and kindness, without taking his clothes off to rest. Herbert was burned more than the others. It was weeks before they were sure he wouldn't be blind. Our mother was not very well at that time, so Father had all the work to take care of, with the help of the oldest daughter, Alice, who is our relative, by the way. Edith's hands were badly burned. We loved Father. Father was a kind and patient man.
Tom and Harriet had such a heritage. Without them, we would not be here today. As we come now to the end, let's all together sing the Fuchs of Higginson, hip hip hooray!
Hip hip.
Hooray!
Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray!
Carrie, are you guys ready? Okay.
Thanks for the question. Thanks, Carl.
Unless you want to, because I was still trying to type something out. Is that okay?
It's still recording, so just center it on the stage and.
Yeah. Mom.
Just
I don't
before
know.
ours get started,
Is this good right here?
just before ours get started, it's a good segue from the Richardsons because
Well,
the daughter
it has
Alice
a
that they were
station.
talking about is one of the people we are doing. We're doing her and her husband. And they talked about how difficult things were for them. And Alice was a very talented and resourceful girl. And she was a seamstress for a lot of people to help their family. And so we're going to tell more about her and her husband. And so, Mark, is it possible to have that now, please? Alice Fuchs and William David were Grandpa and Grandma Grandpa Higginson's great grandparents. My kids' great great grandparents and my grandkids' great 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 grandparents. William was born in Upton, Summit County on March 5th, 1872, Travis's birthday coincidentally. And that's just right over here, just a few miles away. Alice was born just 10 miles away in Colville. Even though only 10 miles separated them, they wouldn't meet for many years. William was a hard worker. His father died when William was just 10 years old, and from that early age he took on much of the responsibilities his father would have carried out. He worked as a miner during his early years of marriage, before buying a farm and turning his attention to farming and building irrigation canals in southern Idaho. Alice was artistic and pretty and known for her beautiful sewing and crocheting. When Alice was 16, she and her sister were walking home from church, a distance of about 3 miles, when a handsome William, driving a team of horses with no wagon box, came driving down the road. It was hot and dusty, and the girls stepped to the side of the road to allow the wagon to pass. But the horses stopped, and a cheery voice said, "Would you young ladies like a ride?" It was tall, lanky, grinning William. They agreed, and he drove them home as they sat on the crossbars, their feet dangling in a cloud of dust. They saw each other fairly often, and then William moved away from home for work. While he was away, he received word that Alice had become engaged to William Covey, a wealthy man from Salt Lake. He hurried home to see her and said, "Alice, you can't be engaged to Covey." "Why?" Alice asked him. William's answer changed their lives. "Because we're going to be married, you and I." Alice broke off her engagement. Their courtship included dances and wagon rides and a trip to Salt Lake to attend the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple in April of 1893. 6 months later, they returned to Salt Lake to be married. They loved to dance, and from early in their courtship, they danced the schottische, a Scottish folk dance. William and Alice would have 15 children, 2 that died as babies, 1 that died as a child, and 13 that lived to old age. Through all the early years of their marriage and all those pregnancies, they still loved to dance. Life farming wasn't easy, but no matter how much work there was to be done on the farm and raising a large family, their children remembered many occasions when their father would sweep their mother around the kitchen, humming this song as they danced. After their last baby was born, William bought a farm with an unpainted house that was little more than an old shack. He remodeled it, adding a living room and 3 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms for their gigantic family. Even after more than 25 years of marriage, William and Alice still dance. One day William was doing chores and he was attacked by a bull. The animal crushed him against the side of the barn, bruising his kidney. After much suffering, he had surgery to remove the damaged kidney. But during the surgery, they discovered he had cancer that had spread throughout his body. He died 18 months later. Alice was left to raise 7 children that still lived at home. She never remarried. She lived for another 26 years and died when my dad was 11 years old. Her children and grandchildren remember her dancing the schottische to this song even as an old woman, sometimes alone, sometimes with her children and grandchildren. She even taught it to many of them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was bawling over there. Next, we're gonna have Mom, and then Spencer. You guys got it? Okay. Mom, and then Spencer, and then who wants to go after that? Okay, great. Mom, Spencer, and then Dan.
Well, hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Maud Elizabeth Blake. I was born in Hooper, Utah, to Frank Blake and Elizabeth Bone. I want to share a few things about me with you. So, here we go. I have nothing to tell you about my youth because nobody wrote anything down. So we're going to start when I got married. When I was 20 years old, I married a handsome young man named John Arthur Edwards. John and I were very happy and we were very excited to have a family. I'm sorry I don't dance and sing, but this is what you're going to get. My greatest joy in life was being a wife, mother, grandmother, and homemaker. I found contentment in these roles, and we were very blessed with 7 precious children. But with the joy of having our children, we also experienced deep sorrow. 2 babies lived only one day, Elizabeth Viola, and Arthur Leo lived only 3 days. John and I lived in Hooper, Utah for a time, and later we moved to Idaho. It was there that our sweet little daughter Doris passed away at age 7. Oh, how we missed this sweet, happy little child. After only 14 years of marriage, tragedy struck our family again. My dear precious husband John died of the Spanish flu and pneumonia. John was only 34 years old. My heart was broken, and me and my family of the living children were left feeling very, very sad and lonely and devastated. This was almost more than we could bear. After being a single mother for 4 years, I married a wonderful man named Franklin Gold Denny. Franklin became a wonderful father to my children. 4 years after we were married, Franklin and I were excited to be expecting a baby. Sadly, our little baby boy was stillborn, another heartbreaking loss for our family. We settled in Paul, Idaho. As my children finished school, all but one left Paul and moved away. Only my sweet Stella Julia stayed in the area to be near me. At age 18, Stella married a wonderful man named Thomas Franklin Hatch, and they were blessed with 11 children. Sorrow came to their home as well. Their precious baby Lila lived only 2 days. Because Tom and Stella lived near me, Franklin and I were blessed to have their children, our grandchildren, only 5 blocks away. They came to see us often, especially the youngest girls, known lovingly as the 4 little girls. Franklin and I spent every holiday with Tom and Stella and family. Many holiday meals and many Sunday dinners were held around the beautiful oak table that I loved. It belonged to my grandmother, my mother, and then to me. And then I passed it on to my daughter Stella. Franklin and I took a job together as the custodians at the church and also at the Paul School. We had plenty of help from our grandson Frank and also the 4 little girls. They loved to stay after school to sweep, clean chalkboards, empty trash, etc. They also helped us clean the church. We had fun working together, and I helped and it helped the children learn to work. I remember a conversation I had with my granddaughter, Karen Maud Hatch. Karen told me that she didn't like her middle name being Maud. I was quite surprised by this declaration, and I said, "Why don't you like your middle name?" She said, "Some of the boys at school were teasing me about it and calling me Muddy Lou, Muddy Lou, Muddy Lou." And this made me feel really sad. My grandma told me that she was sorry. No, I'm sorry, I'm getting out of character here. I told her I was very sorry that the boys were being cruel, and then I reminded her that she was named after me and that I loved my middle name, my name. And then I reminded her that she was named for me, and that I loved my name very much, and that we were kindred spirits, and she was my namesake. We were Maud Elizabeth and Karen Maud. From then on, Karen told me she loved her name. I was easily convinced. Whatever my grandma wanted, that was okay. And I was happy to be named after her. And just a reminder, we should all be proud of our names and our heritage. Perhaps some of you have noticed that I have this little flesh-colored patch on my nose. Let me explain what that's all about. I was diagnosed with cancer on the bridge of my nose. Not being experienced with cancer, the doctors sent me back east to a specialist. The doctors removed the cancer, but it left me with a hole in my nose, about the size of a bean. The doctors weren't experienced with plastic surgery like they are today, and so it was left that way. Each morning I had to get up and cut a little patch, a flesh-colored little pad, and put it on my nose, and it was held in place by my glasses. I got used to doing that daily routine of caring for this spot on my nose, and I was just happy to be alive. Once a year for many years, I rode the train back east to see the specialist to make sure the cancer had not returned. Sorry, I can't. These are not my glasses. So it's a bit dark and it's a little hard to read. Okay, now put on my hat. Because of the cancer experience, I was not supposed to have my face exposed to the sun, so I tried to remember to wear a hat when I was outside. I enjoyed quilting, embroidery, crocheting, etc., but gardening was my passion. I always had a large vegetable garden and many flower beds all around my yard. It was always so beautiful. My favorite flowers were the peonies. I had an amazing raspberry patch, and the 4 little girls loved to come and help me in the yard, and their reward was they could go to the raspberry patch and eat all the ripe, delicious raspberries they wanted. One of my favorite days of the year was always Memorial Day. Tom and Franklin would fill the trunk of our 2 cars with buckets of water. Then we cut flowers and filled the buckets with peonies and drove to the cemetery with the grandchildren. It was so fun to drive around the various graves and leave flowers in memory of our family and friends. Remove straw hat. Sadly, after nearly 30 years of marriage, my dear husband Franklin passed away. He was a wonderful man, and I loved him dearly. My granddaughter Pauline moved in with me while I tried to adjust to my single life. Many times others of the 4 little girls would be with me overnight as well, and I loved those times. Perhaps I should explain who the 4 little girls were. They were 4 of Tom and Stella's younger girls, Pauline, Karen, Marcine, and Lola. And there were times when they wondered if anybody knew their real names, because they were always referred to as the 4 little girls. Due to circumstances beyond their control, Tom and Stella and the 4 little girls moved to Castle Rock, Washington to find work. My family didn't think I should be alone anymore, so Tom and Stella drove to Paul, Idaho, and took me home to live with them in Washington State. They took good care of me, and I loved being with them. After being with them for a while, I suffered 2 strokes, and I left this life at age 77. It was a glorious blessing to me to be reunited with so many loved ones who had gone before me. I could go on, but in the last few minutes that I want to take, I want to leave you with my testimony. Like Nephi, I was born of goodly parents. I was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was always very active, and I loved serving in the church wherever I was called. I never doubted the experience of Joseph Smith in the Sacred Grove or the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. I am grateful my family received the blessings of the temple. My testimony was strong all of my life. My greatest desire is that all of my posterity be strong in the church and obey the commandments of God so we can all be together forever. To each of you out here, you are my posterity. I am either your great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, or great-great-great-grandmother. I am Maud Elizabeth Blake Edwards Denny. I look forward to spending eternity with all of you. I love you all dearly, and I remain lovingly yours, Grandma Higginson. And this was my grandma.
Okay, welcome everyone. So our person that we selected was Ira Stearns Hatch, married to Weltha Bradford. So then we mentioned some other people. We had researched a lot of people. Some of them ended up getting selected, so we cut them to some degree. Anyway, we'll try not to step on toes, but you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. So Ira Stearns. Yeah, get to it.
Also, I'm going to Kirtland to make a donation for the temple. Hello, sir. Is this Kirtland?
Yes, this is Kirkland. Oh yeah, I think that's him right over there chopping lumber.
Hello, Joseph Hatch. We were expecting you. Mommy brought me to go towards the pulpit in the temple.
Okay, so yes, Andrew was Joseph Smith. When Ira Stearns, I think it was even before he was baptized, Weltha had been baptized, he had not, but he decided to make a donation to the temple building in Kirtland. So he told no one knew he was coming, went to donate the money to the temple, saw a man near the building site and said, "Hey, I'm looking for the prophet Joseph Smith." And he said, "Oh, right over there, the man chopping wood." And before he even opened his mouth, the prophet Joseph stuck his axe in the stump and came over to him and said, "Brother Hatch, I've been expecting you." Again, no one knew he was coming. He told no one. "I've been expecting you. The money that you are donating is going to go to the building of the pulpit in the Kirtland Temple." So, pretty cool. Sorry, one second. Okay, so when Lisa assigned us this, we wanted to pick the best ancestor, the coolest stories, come up with the funniest skit, and so we started looking into it, and so came across, well, we had already known about this one. We've done a lot of trips as our family and seen a lot of family history stuff from all over Utah, all the way back to the East Coast. And so this is one of the ones that we've always really liked. So,
Hello, everybody. Let's practice our beliefs.
You guys can't practice your beliefs here.
Then we're out of here. Let's go be free.
We can take my whip, the Mayflower. Look, there's Indians. Let's go talk to them. No, Mark, Chiefs say we eat food. Forgive me.
I declare this the first Thanksgiving.
okay, so you likely know who that was. As was mentioned earlier, we have a rich heritage, not only in pioneer ancestry, but in the establishment of this country. They came over in the Mayflower, and then a couple years later, a lot of their relatives who stayed behind, awaiting an established place to arrive at in the Americas, they came after the fact. So more direct ancestors came on that following voyage. Let's see. Yeah, I'll skip that because they kind of mentioned all of them, so that's good. Mark? Okay, so this is one of our trips. We spent a lot of time searching old cemeteries, and John, was your family there, or was it just you? Or just John and Tony on one of their trips. So they've done similar things. Anyway, we were able to find some ancestors from the 1600s and 1700s back on the East Coast. Next, Mark, please. Here he goes. You're doing great, Mark. So as many of you know, William Bradford was the governor of Plymouth Colony. William Brewster was one generation older. He was kind of the spiritual leader of the group, both direct ancestors. What was that? This is great. You're doing great. It says we were able to find, well, yeah, I guess that's what we were about to see. I thought I had listed some of the ones that we found that were not on the Mayflower. Mark, don't worry about it. Ain't no thing. I'll just go back to what I was reading. Okay, so as we were reading about all these different people, and their stories and trying to figure out who's best, we realized some things. Well, first, we looked up William Jones Edwards, second great grandpa, the husband of the woman, I can't remember her name now, Julia, thank you, that Mark and Susie's family did. Again, died at age 29 from injuries while working for the Union Pacific. And then Ida Elizabeth Dibble and Orson Samuel Hatch. Does anyone have Orson Samuel Hatch? Okay. Second great grandparents through Grandpa Hatch. Ida died during childbirth at 36. Orson died of typhoid fever 2 years later, leaving six children orphaned. So there we are with William Bradford. And you can just skip through them. There's just different of the markers that we found. So this right here is William Jones Edwards. He's the one that died at age 29 from injuries at work. Next, Mark. That's Ida Elizabeth Dibble. And the next one is Orson Samuel Hatch. So yeah, they died fairly young. Okay, next, sorry. And then I'll get to her. There was also, some of you may have heard the name Mary Higginson. She married last name Smith, but for some reason the kids kept the name Higginson. That's why this is the Higginson family reunion and not the Smith family reunion.
Oh, yeah.
She did us a solid, I guess. Anyway, finally was that last one, Dorcas Dan. That's a name that I remember from a kid just because, what a name.
Yeah.
Also, can you see where Grandpa and subsequently lots of us got our lips? So Dorcas Dan was married to Jonathan Martin Harris. She's our second great-grandma through Grandma Higginson.
That's like college.
So as I was saying, as these names started to become more real and looking for the exciting story we wanted to share, we realized a couple of things. Without each one of them, whether they were the coolest story or the most boring story, without each one, we're not here. Each one is vital. And for that, they are worth mentioning in a skit. And two, I was impressed with the steadfastness of all these people. Like Mom mentioned, I think it was at the auction meeting thing. As a kid, we moved to Missouri when I was young, and then we moved back to Utah when I was 8 or 9. And I remember that was the first time I heard of the 24th of July, and that people would always talk about their pioneer ancestors. Same story as Mom shared, that I was so jealous. I thought, well, that's cool. They have so much history in the church. And over the years, I've learned that there is no one that can rival us. There are some that can match us, but no one can surpass us, I should say, in richness of history within the church. Wealth of Bradford goes all the way back to within like a year and a half, 2 years of the start of the church. It's amazing. Anyway, the steadfastness of all these people, they were, whether their story was exciting or not, they did their part. They stayed true to they held the course. They did their part to keep the posterity in the church, to keep the line moving. You know, we're going to face things in our lives that may make us question things or be frustrated with things. But the bottom line is we've got to just keep the line moving. Don't be the one that steps out of line and ruins it for the rest of your posterity. And I wanted to close with the testimony of Dorcas Dan.
All my children are good Latter-day Saints, always holding responsible positions in the church. With the greatest of pleasure, I bear my testimony to the truthfulness of the gospel, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I know that by following the gospel principles given to us by God through Joseph Smith, we will gain eternal life. I know that the priesthood is the power of God, delegated to man on earth. I would gladly make my testimony stronger if it was within my power. I'm thankful for the privilege of the gospel, that my children are all of a credit to me, a credit to any community that they may live in.
Thank you. I'm grateful for this challenge, this task, and the opportunity to learn more about our heritage, because it is such a heritage. I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Let's do this. Sharon is not feeling well. We had a little USB thing. Stand by. Thank you. Thank you. doing Nairn Young Higginson, and we have a little slideshow. And you know that Lauren and Allison, our dad, aren't here, so there's a couple of them they're putting their voices into. So we don't even know which ones they are. So we'll probably wait a second per slide to make sure we don't talk over them. Thank you.
Can you see it well enough? Do you want me to keep turning that light off? Do you need this?
Turn the light off. Thank you. It's supposed to be 1959. Yeah, he didn't go back in time. He died in 1959. Nairn Young Higginson, 1877 to 1959. He was 81 years old. He's a husband, father, grandson, or grandfather, a son, a farmer, a patriot, a jokester, a former smoker, a banjo player, and disciple of Christ.
Nairn Young Higginson was born in 1870.
Lauren.
Nairn Young Higginson was born in 1877 in Goshen, Utah, to W.T. Higginson and Christina Young Higginson. Nairn was named after his maternal grandfather, Nairn Young, who died in a shipwreck in 1847 as he was crossing the ocean to New Orleans so he could earn some money and send for his family. The following was written by Nairn Young Higginson.
Well, when I was about 17 years old, I fell in love with a very charming young girl. Her name was Caroline Christina Detton. We both fell for each other. We kept company with each other for about a year. Then, the summer of 1895, we both worked at a dairy where there was about 200 cows to be milked. Each milker was supposed to milk 20 to 25 cows night and morning. I used to trade my easy milking cows to Miss Detton for her hard milking cows. My wages were $20 per month and board. I had to furnish my own saddle horse. I believe the girls got $12 per month. Well, the two of us managed to save $65 that summer. So in the fall of that year, 1895, W.A. Call, Annie Detton, Caroline Christina Detton, and myself started for Salt Lake City to be married in the temple. We were married 8 November, 1895.
All right, again, this is his own words because we have his journal. It says, "We have 7 living children, besides 2 children, a girl and a boy, who passed away in infancy. I am very proud of my family. I wish to thank my Heavenly Father for blessing us with a family as good as ours." We have the diary kept by Nairn Young Higginson between 1946 and 1948. We wanted to share some photos with you as we read some of the passages from his diary. April 16, 1946, made headgate and put it in. April 16, 1947, some sucker stole my water this morning, took mother to the doctor at 2 o'clock, came back, and some sucker had my water.
Next slide.
If you remember, Grandpa always loved a free meal. It seems this characteristic runs in the family. February 11th, 1947. Went to Chris Miller's sale where cows sold from $150 to $270. I wouldn't have went by the advertised free lunch.
February 21st, 1947. Well, today was the big sale at Chase's. I went and helped eat the lunch. It was not a bad lunch, and there was plenty. May 10th, 1946. Mother gets a shampoo today to get ready for Mother's Day. Got her hair fixed, and it sure looks nice. Better than mine.
May 2nd, 1947. Took mother to the Peacock to get it permanent. She sure got a nice job done for $10. I went to buy a wiener pig, but it was too late. March 22nd, 1946. Took mother to the doctor. Also took her to get her hair marceled.
You took care of that hair.
It looks like those of us who like our soda come by it honestly, in the colorful language. August 29th, 1947. Went to a sale down at the Sunny Ridge. Bought a bottle of pop and drank the whole blamed thing. And High Cow brought $190, too blaming high.
Ever wonder where Dad got some of his odd idioms? September 3rd, 1946. Car leaked oil like 60. I took it back to Gunderson to get it refixed. Just got back. Sure hope it doesn't leak now.
In the summer of 1947, for some reason, Naren Young Higginson and John Denton Higginson decided to grow beards. They seemed to have a lot of fun with it, including taking pictures in the same hat. Our 6-year-old Grandpa Higginson was there to see this. July 20th, 1947, went to church today, Sunday school and priesthood meeting. My whiskers are getting longer every minute. July 24th, 1947, big centennial parade, combed my whiskers and put my little Duffy hat on, and I sure can, and I sure cut a shine. Sicily dressed tip-top. July 25th, 1947. Well, today John came over, brought his camera, and took a bunch of pictures of him and me and our whiskers and hat.
Notice who's missing from this photo? When Dad, Grandpa Higginson, was 6 years old, he broke his leg very badly. He spent a very long time in the hospital, which was very hard and lonely for him. September 10th, 1947. Went to the hospital to see Lynn, but he was sound asleep, so we just left him a picture book and came home. There's Grandpa at age 7 with his broken leg. September 11th, 1947. Went to the hospital again to visit Lynn, and they brought him home in the evening. This photo has an amazing backstory. This is Naren, Caroline, and their daughter Hazel attending April General Conference in 1930. Naren was fulfilling a promise to his daughter Hazel. She was a young girl. She was very sick in the hospital in Pocatello. Her dad promised her that if she would get well, he would take her to Salt Lake to General Conference. She got well, and he never forgot his promise. Naren Young Higginson loved his children dearly.
Naren Young Higginson was a great man, a faithful man, a humble man, and an honorable man. His daughter Hazel wrote this about her father.
I must add what a wonderful father we were blessed with. So loving and kind, always full of fun and jokes. Father could coax music out of any musical instrument. His favorite, though, was the banjo, and he played and sang to many priesthood parties and state parties. He was always thanking us for being their children. It was we who were the fortunate ones and permitted to have such wonderful parents as God gave unto us. We too thank them for being ours.
Thank you, Elsa.
What's up?
We love our great and great great grandfather Naren Young Higginson, and we are so proud to have been blessed to carry his name forward.
I just like to leave my testimony. I know that learning about our family members really does bring us closer to the gospel. It helps us, like we've gone over so well, that when we learn about their sacrifices, it makes us, makes some of the things that we go through seem so minuscule. They had some hard lives. Too bad Naren's not here, but me and Naren were talking. He was saying how grateful he is to be able to carry on the name of some great men, because it helps him be motivated to keep that name pure and to keep it alive. Yeah, and I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Me too, actually. I want to say something too. I'm really grateful for everybody in our past too, because without all of them, without everything they did, we wouldn't have been here. Even like the little things that happened, like we learned about I think it was his mother, Christina Young. She was awesome. She escaped England and came on a boat and was one of the first members of the church. And if she didn't get on that boat, we would not be here. There's I looked it up. It's like a 1 in 400 trillion chance that we're even alive right now, or something like that. But I'm just so thankful for everybody here and everybody in the past. Love you all.
Love you all. Thank you.
Love you.
We'll go.
Thank you, all of those. Is everybody okay to finish here? I want to be sensitive to little children and stuff. Are you okay? I feel like it maybe got a tiny bit warmer the last 10 minutes. Is that am I imagining? Are we good here?
We're good. We're good.
John or Robert or Richard, is that everybody?
Yeah, we'll go.
Hey, who would like to go next?
I texted Rob's up. Richard. Go Richard.
I don't care. Okay, John. Really quick, I was reading Naren Young's journal a couple weeks ago, and he had this entry. I loved it so much because he was talking about our Grandpa Higginson. Naren Young. April 5th, 1947, went to sail for a little while. bought checkerboard and checkers to beat John with. He was hilarious. He had such a good sense of humor, so Naren was right. I loved reading his diary, which is online, by the way. That's how I read it.
I was just going to say, I got flustered and I attributed that testimony to Dorcas Dan, but it was Christina Young, who they just mentioned, the mother of Naren Denton.
Awesome. Dorcas Dan.
Okay, so we are doing Meltire Hatch. Meltire Hatch is my third great grandpa. For all the grandkids, he's your fourth great grandpa. He's grandma's second great grandpa. Pioneer, colonizer, obedient and faithful servant, along with many other titles. Your parents, my siblings, probably have this red book. You could read through it, and it talks all about his parents, which were Ira Stearns Hatch, which Spencer family covered, and Wealtha Bradford, which is what Scott and Lori's family covered. Mark, go to the next slide. So here's some pictures, Ira Stearns and Wealtha, top left. And he married Permelia Snyder, which was the family that settled here. Top right is her parents, Samuel and Henrietta. And a little bit of fact, the Snyders, when they immigrated, they actually changed the spelling. Their original spelling was Schneider. They were from Germany. They changed it to Snyder. And then Spencer covered a little bit of Orson Samuel Hatch. He was the second son of Meltire and Permelia, and he covered he died young. Go to the next. So here's a picture of Meltire and Permelia. Go to the next, Mark. And this is, Leah's going to read a little bit of information about Meltire, and then Jack was going to read a story, but yeah. Okay, Leah.
Meltire served as a lieutenant in the Nauvoo region and was intimately acquainted with the prophet Joseph Smith. Meltire heard the prophet deliver his last speech before going to Carthage jail. During these trying times, Meltire carried messages to and from Carthage jail while the prophet and his brethren were confined there. He attended the funeral of the martyrs and was present at the notable gathering in Nauvoo when Brigham Young was acknowledged to be the right man to stand at the head of the church.
Sam, will you read this?
The family left Nauvoo with Brigham Young in 1846. When they reached Iowa, Meltire and his 16-year-old brother Orrin were pressed into service with the Mormon Battalion. Meltire was reportedly instrumental in keeping his brother alive.
Okay, Jack's going to read a story about Meltire and his brother in the Mormon Battalion.
It's called Brothers.
Oh, real quick. This was in the Friend magazine in 1984, I think.
Soldier. Meltire Hatch leapt to his feet and saluted the man on horseback. The Mormon Battalion had been on the march since dawn. Meltire had taken advantage of a break to bring his 16-year-old brother Orrin to rest in the shade of a tree. He hadn't heard the officer's horse until it was right next to him. Lieutenant Smith returned Meltire's salute. At ease, soldier. He looked down at Orrin, who lay unmoving, his eyes closed. Your companion looks to be very ill. Yes, sir, Meltire said sadly. He contracted the fever at Fort Leavenworth, but I know that in time. Time? Lieutenant Smith loudly interrupted. This troop has no time. The untimely death of our former commanding officer has set us back 2 weeks. We cannot defer to the sick and the weary. Leave him. Meltire's protests were ignored as Lieutenant Smith turned and gave the order to assemble. As the drums sounded, men began to scramble to collect their provisions and line up. Meltire sat down heavily and put his head in his hands. Meltire, Orrin's voice was barely audible. Forgive me, I joined up only because I wanted to finally be useful like you were in Nauvoo. I never imagined it would end like this. Well, none of us imagined we'd ever be led by Lieutenant Smith either. Few of the Gentile leaders have been unkind. He's just the worst of the lot. Let's not forget the promises given by Brigham Young and the 12. Meltire said with conviction. If we conduct ourselves properly on this march, our lives will be spared. He put his pack and canteen in Orrin's hands. Here are some extra food and water to keep you for a while. I must go now, but I'll be back, I promise. he got to his feet. I never meant to be a burden. Brothers can never be burdens. Later that night, Meltire woke with a start. He wondered why he was alone in the woods in the middle of the night. Then he remembered that he was on an urgent mission, that somebody's life depended on him. His first thought was that he was still a messenger in the Nauvoo Legion. Meltire shook his head to clear his jumbled thoughts. He spoke aloud to himself. The prophet Joseph is dead. I couldn't have prevented his assassination. However, I should have gotten help when my horse went lame, instead of trying to walk to Carthage. Then I might have delivered the last message from his loved ones before he died. He shook his head sadly. But I was young and full of pride, just as Orin is now. At the thought of his brother, Meltire stumbled to his feet. That's whose life depended on him now. Weary as he was, he had to keep walking. The 2 previous nights, Meltire had another soldier help him bring Orin back to camp on horseback. Each morning when Lieutenant Smith discovered what had happened, he angrily ordered that Orin be left behind again. Last night, Commander Smith had informed Meltire that if he wanted to keep up his foolhardy venture, he could no longer disturb the sleep of other men or beasts. That was why he was now alone and on foot, and he knew that he must be only about a third of the way back to where he'd left his brother. Meltire had prayed fervently for when he'd set out. He knew he had an impossible task. Even if he had not been exhausted from lack of sleep, it would take him most of the night just to reach Orin on foot. Although Orin was much improved and could probably walk, he couldn't travel very fast in his weakened condition. Meltire knew that if he didn't reach the battalion before it pulled out at dawn, it would leave them both behind, but he also knew that he could never leave Orin. Several times on these night trips, Meltire had the uneasy feeling that he was being watched. Now he was certain he saw movement by a large rock up ahead. He stopped walking and slowly reached for his pistol, but the pistol was gone. He must have dropped it back where he'd fallen asleep. He started to reach for his knife, but froze when an Indian stepped out of the shadows. In the light of the moon, something glinted in the Indian's hand. It was Meltire's pistol. As Meltire stood, wondering what to do, he heard the sound of a horse approaching. Could someone from the battalion be following me, he wondered, or could it be another Indian? The Indian appeared not to have heard the sound, but stood unmoving, the gun down at his side. When the horse came into the clearing, Meltire's heart sank when he saw that it was an Indian pony with 2 riders. Meltire closed his eyes and prayed for help. Meltire, a familiar voice said. Startled, Meltire opened his eyes to see that one of the riders had dismounted and was approaching him cautiously. Meltire, the voice repeated, is that you? Orin, the 2 brothers rushed together in a brief, fierce hug, then turned to face the waiting Indians. The Indians had both mounted the pony, leaving the brothers' guns and packs on the ground. One Indian slowly raised his hand in a salute. Brothers, he said before they turned and rode off into the shadows. That's what he said when he came and got me, Orin said. I thought he meant that something had happened to you, so I went with him even though I was scared. How did they know we were brothers? They've been watching us these past few nights, Meltire said with sudden realization. And maybe they could see how much we cared for each other. They could also see how much we needed their aid, so they helped us. Or, he smiled, Orin, maybe he meant that we are all brothers. I'm grateful for their help, Orin said softly, but sometimes it isn't easy to accept help from others. I know what you mean, Meltire leaned on Orin. But if you're as strong as you look, now it's time for you to be useful. I need your help to walk back to camp. I hate to be a burden, but I am very tired. I am much stronger now, Meltire, don't worry, Orin told him with a smile. Brothers can never be burdens.
Go to the next slide, Mark. So these were the guns and sword that Meltire was issued in Fort Leavenworth as when he joined the Mormon Battalion. I'd like to think that maybe somebody in our family line would have gotten these, but since Orson Samuel Hatch died before Meltire died, I'm sure they went to another son. But next slide. This is a painting by a lady named Diane Hatch, which would be a relative of this story, that showed the 2 Indians that brought Orin back to Meltire, so he didn't have to make that long hike back. But he did that several nights. Finally, the commanding officers gave him his own horse so that Orin can ride it, and after a few more days, he was healthy enough to make the walk himself. So the love of his brother saved his life. And they both made it all the way to San Diego with the Mormon Battalion. Just some little bit of information. He was a very obedient person, and he knew Brigham Young personally. And Brigham Young actually sent him to several places to settle. Some of them he was called back from. But he started down at Fuller Woods Cross, where he had a claim, after the Mormon Battalion time. Then he went back to winter quarters to get his family, and then came back and farmed there in Woods Cross. He was called by Brigham Young to go settle in Carson Valley, Nevada, which is on the east side of Lake Tahoe. Then they were called back. When they were called back, they came to live here in Snyderville, him and Permelia, and helped work at the sawmill for a time. Then Brigham Young called him to go down and settle the Santa Clara area of St. George, which they also then had cattle up in the Eagle Valley area in Nevada, just northwest of St. George and Santa Clara.
Every time we made it great.
He then got kind of called to build a sawmill just west of Hatch, where Hatch, Utah is now, but he had a home in Panguitch, and then a second home down by where Hatch is now, where he had a ranch. But he was very obedient. He always did what Brigham Young and others asked him to do as far as helping to expand the reach of the church. Go to the next one, Mark. So I found his patriarchal blessing, and Joan is going to help us read some of the highlights. Pay particular attention to the underlined part.
Thou art a lawful heir to the holy priesthood through the lineage of thy progenitors, and to all the blessings of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, through thine obedience to the everlasting gospel. You shall triumph over your enemies through the power of faith, and your days shall be lengthened out as a reward for your honor you have bestowed upon your parents. Thou art greatly blessed in thy posterity, for they are naturally inclined to believe the gospel, and thou shalt rule over them in connection with their mothers in time and in eternity.
So I really appreciated the blessings that he was given in this. Specifically talked about the honor he had given his parents, that all of us can do, but also that his posterity, because of him, were naturally inclined to believe and live the gospel. And I hope that as you look to your parents and see the examples they are in living the gospel, that you also will be inclined to live the gospel yourself. But that's what we have to share about. Yeah. One more thing, Ruby wanted to read the end.
Yeah.
Tyler died at his ranch July 8, 1895, following a series of strokes which finally proved fatal. At the time of his death, he was a member of the High Council of the Panguitch State.
Okay, that's all. While Robert's coming down, one other thing I forgot to mention, he met Permelia in Nauvoo, where Samuel Snyder was the branch president in the little community they lived outside of Nauvoo. And so that's where Meltire was baptized, and that's where the Hatch and the Snyder family met.
Yeah. What's cross?
It's to pick up their trash.
That's not us.
I didn't say it was.
It is all some of it. It's trash. You want your chocolate?
No, I was looking for my Twix.
Oh, you got it? No way.
Are you sitting on it?
No, what's the matter? Oh, here it is. Good news. No, but I just thought how funny when we got up to do our thing.
Yeah. I'm sure you want it. Go ahead. Give it to Pearl.
John, you want to get the lights? This is just going to be a brief history of W.T. Higginson. And then after this video plays, then I'll just share a couple of facts.
Who's the best one? Richard? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Keep you warm.
William Thomas Higginson were the sixth of 11 children born to Charles Wood Higginson and Mary Ann Bouncer. W.T. was born in the small town of Kenton, located in the county of Shropshire in western England. At a very young age, W.T. moved with his family from Kenton to the Gatton estate, where his father served as game warden for 14 years. At the age of 14, W.T. moved to Hednesford, England, and became a stable hand and a jockey at the Hednesford Racing Stables. W.T. raced horses, including some of the champions owned by the king. After 4 years, W.T. moved back to the Gatton estate. Upon returning home, W.T. became acquainted with some elders of the church. He learned about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. He learned of the first vision and Joseph Smith seeing God the Father and Jesus Christ. After much study and sincere prayer, W.T. became convinced of the truthfulness of the gospel and accepted the invitation to be baptized in July of 1855. Some weeks after his baptism, while attending a church meeting, W.T. saw a young lady and fell in love. After a lovely courtship, W.T. and Elizabeth Jones set sail for America. They ended up in Cleveland, Ohio, and were married on October 1st, 1857.
That's not really done.
The marriage lasted only 3.5 short months as Elizabeth fell ill. She died in W.T.'s arms on January 17th, 1858. 4 months later, with only $36 in his pocket, W.T. set out to join the Saints, heading west. When he arrived in St. Joseph, he was down to $6 and used $5 of that to purchase a ticket to Omaha. With only $1 to his name, W.T. went to Columbus and secured employment for 7 days working on a hotel. This allowed him to replenish his dwindling pocketbook so that he could continue his journey west. At the age of 23, W.T. set out for the Salt Lake Valley, and upon arriving in the valley, worked at various jobs trying to get himself established. W.T.'s experience with horses and wagons prompted Brigham Young to call him to travel to Florence, Nebraska, to help a large company of saints make their journey to Zion. The company, made up of 355 wagons, left Florence on July 8, 1863, and arrived in the valley in early September. Although he made several trips, the first trip was special to W.T. because that was where he met Christina Young. Christina Young had large brown eyes and soft brown curls. W.T. fell in love. The young couple were married on September 27, 1863, only 2 weeks after arriving in Salt Lake Valley. The newlyweds moved to Hyde Park in Cache County, and after a short time, moved to Bountiful. The growing family lived there until the middle of 1869, when they were called to aid in the settlement of Goshen in central Utah, where the family met Hattie Taylor. When asked what she thought of W.T. marrying Hattie, Christina answered, "If it is right with Hattie, it is all right with me." The two wives and their families lived harmoniously together for many years. If there were ever any difficulties, the two women often sided against W.T. Christina said regarding Hattie, "A better woman never lived than Grandpa's plural wife, and may I love and comfort her as long as I have life. And make no child of mine say aught to ever cause her pain.
and when we leave this earth, may we be blessed to meet again. While in Goshen, W.T. secured employment hauling ore from the Tintic mines to the railroad head. This experience caused him to become interested in prospecting, where he had much success. In the winter of 1882, W.T. received a letter from a friend who lived in Hatch, Idaho. The friend urged W.T. and his family to come and take up a homestead. So in the early spring of 1883, W.T. left Goshen with his 2 wives and children and headed for Idaho. It was a long trip over rough roads, but they eventually made it. W.T. went right to work and staked out a homestead near a spring. Soon homes were built for each of his wives. A fine garden and a number of fruit trees were planted, and before long the Higginsons were known throughout the valley for their produce. W.T. and his family thrived in their new community. They helped establish the first ward in the area and served faithfully in the church. W.T. even donated the land upon which the church building was built. The Higginsons were a strength to their neighbors and their friends. Life did present many challenges, however. There was sickness, there was death. W.T. even spent time in jail. Though William Thomas Higginson was small in stature, he was a giant of a man. To her beloved W.T., Christina wrote, "Whatever I say wrong of thee, I hope thou wilt forgive. For if I did not sometimes sin, I sure I would not live. That's my worst fault when I am mad. I speak before I know. And many a word I speak in anger. Speak I know, it is not due." I messed up there. "Forever after I've been mad, it suits you to a T to have some little present that you can give to me. And if I scold you, sit and sing and care not what I say, and tell me that you're sure I will repent my words someday. If I should search, I could not find a better man than thee, and thousands would not be so good as you have been to me. Dear William, may you happy be until the end of life, and may I prove to be with you a true and loving wife." William Thomas Higginson lived an amazing life of adventure, of service, and of fierce loyalty to his faith and to his family. He passed away in Hatch, Idaho on November 29, 1914. He was found in a kneeling position at his bedside, praying to his God. Okay, if I can get a light just so I can see a couple of facts here. So these stats that I'm about to give you are from like 40 years ago. So I don't know what the new updated numbers are, but as of about 40 years ago, W.T. had 13 children, 62 grandchildren, 246 great-grandchildren, 537 great-great-grandchildren, and 85 great-great-great-grandchildren. So he has quite a posterity. And I wanted to clarify one thing. We joke about some of our ancestors being sent to these horrible places and not being able to really make it. W.T. went to Chesterfield and the Hatch area as a result of a friend writing him a letter and inviting him to join them up there. So it wasn't the church that sent W.T. to Chesterfield. It was a friend that said, "Hey, we love it up here, you should come join us." Anyway, we've talked about a lot of the challenges that our ancestors faced and faced with faith and steadfastness. And this is how W.T. looked at life. And I think that we see this in our ancestors and in ourselves. So listen to W.T.'s words, and this is how I'll close. "You can see how the hand of the Lord was over me since I obeyed the gospel. He has been very merciful and kind unto me up to the present moment of time. Yet I have passed through tribulations and sorrows, but this has been a blessing to me. It has taught me to acknowledge the hand of God in all things. I rejoice to know that I shall meet my loved ones on the other side. And I too rejoice at the thought of being with our loved ones on the other side. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen."
Amen.
going to get back up, so I just want to thank everyone while Richard's coming down for all of your work and thought, and I'm amazed by all of you and touched by your effort. We'll finish with Richard, which I think will seem very appropriate, actually. And then at the request of Mom, we are going to rewatch the theme video from the other night.
Very brief. Very brief, very powerful.
That was a special request from Mom. She wanted to finish with it. Anyway, love you all.
Love you.
Do you have anything you'd like to put on? No. I know this doesn't. So, I had a bad attitude leading up to this assignment, and I think that I've clarified that with some of the family. And what ended up happening is I settled on sharing a little bit about our dad for my siblings, and your grandpas for my kids and their cousins, and your great-grandpa for some of my grandkids. I want to keep it quick. It has been a nice evening, and I think that this will leave us maybe with a good thought. I had a chance to visit with Mom today at a table and asked her what she thought should be shared about Dad. And Mom talked about Dad's faithfulness, not just to the gospel, but his faithfulness to her, and how it was very secure for her to know that Grandpa was never wandering, that he was always the most faithful and loving companion that she could have asked for. I'm going to give a really brief history of Dad. We're going to talk about that strength as well as his physical strength, and maybe share a little bit of a lesson from Grandpa's life. Grandpa Higginson, I'll call him, what should I call him, Grandpa or Dad? Grandpa Higginson, because most of you, he's your grandpa, was the third child born to John and Merle. You've heard about them tonight, some. He was the third son, and his older two brothers were athletes and track stars, and he was not. But he had other strengths, including physical strength that outdid each of those brothers. And he had an inner spiritual strength that was unmatched by any of his siblings as well. He was the tallest son. By the way, in that family there were 8 children, and all 8 of them graduated from college after no one in the family previously ever even attending college. So that's kind of a big deal. But the brothers all went into education, for a while at least. Only one retired as a teacher. But they all got their start in education, and they were able to do things during the summer to better their lives. And at one point, they all lived close enough in Utah that they decided that they were going to become loggers. And you can't see the mountains anymore, but the highest peaks that you can see in the distance over here to the southeast, there's an area called Norway Flats. And the Forest Service was selling stands of timber there back when they were teaching school in Heber and in Utah County. And so they decided they were going to buy some stands of timber. They made their own log truck. They made their own system for loading a log truck in the woods. And they spent 3 summers at least, maybe it was even 4 summers, Mom, logging in the Uintas and hauling those logs back to Heber and to Wallsburg so that they could build homes for each other. The process while they were logging that I guess they'd done some research on, was that they would fell the trees first of all, and after the tree was felled, some of the other uncles would use small chainsaws to trim the biggest branches, and then the small branches of the tree, before the tip was cut off, were cut off by axes, and some of the older cousins were there to do that. And I was privileged to be able to go and participate, even though I was significantly younger than most of them. But the trees that they were logging, a lot of them were big, and it required a big chainsaw. And to start their logging ventures, they bought a Stihl 090 chainsaw.
And to some of you, that might be as familiar as an OO-RAV. It's the largest one-man chainsaw that company, which is the premier timber chainsaw company in the world, ever made. And it's a heavy saw. And Dad would go up and he would cut trees all day long with this massive saw, while his brothers did other things, and while the cousins cut small branches. And then when he was done with his work felling the trees, and others had gotten them prepared, he would take his turn on the tractor, and they would hook up to the butt end of a log with a tractor, and they would skid that log back to where the truck was, and subsequently load it onto the truck and get ready to bind that load and head home at the end of the day. As it was the end of the day on one occasion, Dad was driving the tractor, and I with my axe in my hand, was riding the back end of the log as we skidded it back to the truck. And if you can picture a log being dragged through a forest with stumps and rocks and whatever, the logs would hit things and roll, and so it was kind of a sport for the boy cousins to ride on the tips of those logs, which we never should have been allowed to do, but we were. And I was grateful that they allowed us to. Anyway, at one point while this log was being skidded, the butt end of the log, stuck firmly against a rock. And it wasn't just a rock, it was a rock outcropping that wasn't going to give. And the tractor, which was in its lowest gear and had a decent amount of throttle, started to lift up because it couldn't go forward. And so it was just pivoting on its rear axle. And the tractor chugged and chugged and chugged and chugged, and just at the point where it seemed inevitable that it was going to come over on top of Grandpa, Grandpa fell off the back of the tractor and was just there helpless, and the tractor died, and it fell back down on its front tire. One of the miracles we had while we were logging. Anyway, we gathered and had a prayer about that. There were other times while we were logging that Uncle David was hit by a log and was given a blessing by his brother Dennis, and we experienced a lot of things. It was really hard work, and it was amazing to see our dad and our grandpa perform physical labor that nobody else there would have been able to do. As a lesson in life, if we look at the things that Grandpa and Grandma Higginson have done, they've done things that would be nearly impossible for anyone else to do. If you think about the line of posterity that we had in the field, wherever it was here the other day, and think about the effort that Mom and Dad and Grandpa and Grandma have put into teaching their own children the gospel, teaching their own children about faithfulness, teaching their own children about the value of family and the benefit of gathering as a family and reinforcing those teachings. It's a monumental task that they have performed, and it's a massive blessing to all of us. I just want to leave the thought with you that our dad came from a very normal family, and yet he was exceptional. And while he was on his mission, he noticed a very exceptional young lady, and they met after his mission was over. They started a family. They invested all that they could, not in the stock market and not in real estate and not in any of the other things that go by the wayside. They invested all of their time and their love and their support in you. And they knew through the promises that have been made through the gospel, through our prophets, through the plan that our Heavenly Father created for us, that investment was going to pay off if they just did their part. And several people have said tonight that we have to recognize the link in the chain that we are, that it's now our job to take up that mantle and to do the things that we need to do in order for us to continue that chain and make ourselves worthy of those blessings that our Father in heaven has in store for us and that He really wants to give to us. I want to remind you again that the wonderful nature of this spirit of Elijah, of turning hearts of fathers to children and children to fathers, has two parts. It's not just the looking back and doing temple work for those who have passed on, and learning about our ancestors and giving our own lives direction and meaning by learning the lessons that they teach us through their lives, it's also passing on to the next generation. So let's not forget the second part of that spirit of Elijah, that it's now our responsibility and our children's responsibility to make sure that we are investing the same amount of time and strength and devotion in our next generation. I can't believe how blessed I am and how blessed all of us are to belong to a family like this, and all of our extended families as well. Let's take the lessons that they have taught us. Let's take the strength that Grandpa and Grandma have shown us, the faithfulness that Grandpa and Grandma have shown us, and pass that along to those that come after us and help us not break the chain that will allow us to be together forever in our Father in Heaven's plan. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.